Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your boy, Delightful Kissboy, and today I just wanted to yap a little bit about ghosts and ghost stories. Ooh, spooky. I want to take a little bit of a break from a video that I'm working on right now. I've been putting a lot of work into a gambling video for the main channel, but I just want to take a break and talk about spooky ghosts. Now, just to kind of get this out of the way, I myself am not a believer. I am not a believer. I do not buy it, as it were. I've had several spooky experiences, I would say, that at certain times, some of them I believed were actually ghosts. But in hindsight, I'm not buying it, okay? I've kind of like looked back on it and been like, nah, there's no fucking way, right? And so my opinions on those experiences have changed over time. I've talked to other people and they've got spooky ghost stories too, but I don't completely believe it. I think that they might believe it, but I don't, all right? And that's kind of where I'm at. If I see compelling evidence, compelling enough evidence of the supernatural, then I'll start to believe maybe. But until that point, I will continue to be a skeptic. But I do enjoy going out and having spooky experiences nonetheless. It's just fun. It's a good time, And I've done plenty of that. I've explored a lot of like abandoned places at night, and it's a good time. Spooky caves, woo, that sort of stuff. It's fun. I think, does this like go all the way through the whole building?
It's awesome.
That's kind of cool.
This has been the best part.
Oh shit, there's a bat. No, there was.
You stepped on my
Sorry, there was a bat up there.
Oh, in the hole?
Yeah, like up on the seat. Oh Jesus, there's more. Let's go.
Oh, you let the bat stop us?
How'd you get yourself in this predicament? Huh? At least, whoa! At least I got to see that cute little butt. Okay, let's just go down to the end and see what's up. I just want to see if it continues on.
We'll be right back.
I think this just... No, this just leads out to this hallway, yeah. That's all it is.
I'm kidding, we're fine. I had to start over.
Hello! That wasn't as echoey as I thought it would be. Interesting. I mean, maybe. But anyway, let's start from the beginning. Let's start from when I was a young kid. One of the more compelling experiences that I had as a child that made me believe in ghosts. And in hindsight, I'm like, okay, I completely misjudged the situation. But basically, when I was like 10 or 12 or, somewhere around that age, my extended family kind of rented like a couple cabins in this park. So I don't remember what park it was. It was some kind of a state park kind of a thing. And there were these cabins that weren't super far off, like the main pathways or whatever, And we were just chilling out there. We were just having a good time. And then we, pack it up and we go to sleep. Now, I was in a top bunk in that cabin, and I distinctly remember waking up in the middle of the night. It might have been like 2 a.m., I don't know. Couldn't tell what time it was. It was just like I woke up, and then I looked out the window that I could see, and I saw what looked like a ghost looking up at me from the window. Now, the lighting around the area was pretty good, so it was like lit up. I don't remember exactly what by, but I remember the lighting was kind of bright. But I see this man like make eye contact with me. And at the time, like I said, I thought it was a ghost. So I just was freaked the hell out. And I didn't say anything, and I just covered my head with a blanket and went back to sleep, right? And I was convinced, like I said, that this was like a ghost that I had seen for a couple years at least. I don't remember exactly when I kind of looked back on it and I was like, that was probably just a guy. You know what I mean? Which is, creepy. It's creepy that there's a man peeking in. But, like, let's be honest here, okay? My friends and I have done our fair share of trespassing at odd hours of the night. And this was like a state park that was near residential areas. It was probably just a guy going and snooping around, just checking shit out. Like, who knows, right? It might have even been like a squatter who, like, would stay in the cabin on, when people weren't using it. Who fucking knows? any number of rational reasons. On top of that, when you wake up, like when you're going to sleep and when you wake up, the chances that you're going to have some kind of a hallucination or change of perception are way the fuck higher. Okay, I know this from firsthand experience because nowadays I have this thing where I relatively often, as I'm drifting off to sleep, I will for some reason hold my breath and then I'll just jolt awake like as I'm falling asleep, and then I have to fucking fall asleep all over again. It's a lot of fun. But what happens oftentimes in these, times when I'm being jolted awake as I'm drifting off to sleep, I'll have these really vivid hallucinations that can oftentimes be pretty fucking creepy, okay? But as an adult, like, you're able to rationalize, like, you're pretty able to easily rationalize that these are just hallucinations, I'll give you some examples, all right? So when I was out at Grand Tetons one time, and I was sleeping in this tent. It was really cold or whatever. I'm drifting off to sleep. I jolt awake, and I hallucinated that there was a man crawling into my tent, right? It wasn't any auditory hallucination. That would have really sold it more. And so I'm seeing, like, it was like a dude's face, like, right in my face. Which, if I wasn't thinking rationally, I would be like, maybe I just saw a fucking ghost, But then it disappears, and you're like, okay, well, I was just falling asleep. And, similarly, I've fallen asleep out in, like, I have this, my house has a really high ceiling in one of the rooms. And I was falling asleep in that room, and the same thing happened. And it looked like, the scene from, like, Hereditary, where, like, the mom is, like, fucking Spider-Man'd up in the corner of the room, when the kid's asleep. I basically saw that in the darkness, like a shadowy figure up in the corner, which, once again, if I was a more supernaturally inclined person, I may have been like, oh my god, I saw a fucking ghost. I saw a fucking ghost, bro. But Hereditary is one of my favorite movies, so I was probably just like, my brain was seeing things it wanted to see, what I'm talking about? And I've had, like, hallucinations of, like, giant spiders and shit too. Okay, it's just weird. I mean, like, I don't know, like, you just kind of know it's a hallucination, so you don't really get that freaked out by it if you've seen it enough. But anyway, the point, I'm getting distracted. The point of this is that there's any number of things, any number of factors that could have gone into making this normal person look more ghost-like in my childlike, imagination, right? I'm just waking up, and, I'm seeing this. It's something that I'm not expecting to see. I'm a kid. It looked like a ghost to me, but I don't think it was. Another experience I had is I was, like, home alone. This one was, like, when I was in high school, I think, at my parents' house at, like, 9... It was like 10 p.m. or some shit, and I, like, exited a room, and I looked over to this... I was, like, on the upper floor. I looked over to the stairs, and it looked like there was, like, a leg jerking. We love jerking here, but there was, like, a leg. It was like a ghost that was, like, I don't know exactly what it was, but it looked like a leg flailing around, which, like, freaked me the fuck out. But once again, I mean, this is like late at night. I was kind of tired, and it's dark. There wasn't a light on down that way, and so it was just dark, and I just see this, like, movement, and my brain kind of, like, rationalized as being this ghostly leg that was flailing around, which it was spooky. But I think, once again, it's just, I mean, it was dark, and I was tired. You see shit. It happens. But at the time, I thought it might be a fucking ghost. I don't know. I was skeptical of that by then, though. I was older. So that's kind of the extent of, like, the actual things that I've believed were ghosts. But I've had other spooky stories that I don't believe are ghosts, but I think people could kind of construe them as being ghost stories. Now, one of them, this is kind of set up like a fucking spooky story, but there's plenty of explanations for it. My friends and I, we were out walking around this park at night. This is something we do a lot. I think it was around Halloween time, and it was like we had a group of, I think, like 6 people, and so it was like me and, like, 3 friends, and then another friend and his girlfriend, right? Now, we didn't like this guy's girlfriend. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to prank them, right? So we're walking along this path. It's like fucking midnight or whatever the hell it is. And at a certain point, there's like a turn in a corner, And so we go around the corner and then we start booking it into the woods, right? Because what we want to do is we want to ditch them and then circle back around and find them and then spook the shit out of them, right? That was our plan. It was like whatever. We take it separate cars, by the way. This comes up in a sec. And so we run off into the woods. We're laughing, we're giggling like hee, we're gonna get these guys. And anyway, we're doing our thing, and then after a while, like we can't really find them, and so we just kind of like lose interest and like just start hanging out in the woods, and we're just walking around checking shit out. But later, we call them and we find out that, they've left already, because they're like, okay, well, we can't find these guys. Let's just go do our own thing. In hindsight, it was kind of a dick move, but this was like high school or early college or some shit, it's whatever. We called them and we were like, ooh, we see you, or like, we saw you. That's what it was. We said, we saw you, right, to them. Which we hadn't. We were just kind of bluffing, and we wanted to like freak them out if they were still in the woods. They're like, "Oh, we've left already," but that was you guys, and we were like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "No, there's all this rustling in the bushes or whatever, which kind of freaked us out, and we saw something. I don't know, and like we thought it was you. It must have been you guys." And we were like, "No, we didn't. We didn't find you guys. We weren't out in that area. That was something else." And like he was like, oh, because like he claims it was not like an animal, it was like a person. All right, so he's saying that there was somebody else out there, or something, that they thought was us. That kind of freaked them out or whatever. And when we called them, they thought, oh, okay, well, it was just these guys, but it wasn't us. It was something else. And so, obviously I don't know his perspective. I would guess that it was some kind of an animal or a person, maybe, which is kind of freaky. It's kind of freaky. But it was, once again, it was a park. Could have been other people out there. I mean, we were out there, so who the fuck knows, right? But it was creepy nonetheless. That was a creepy little story. And it's kind of set up like a good old, ooh, but who was phone kind of a thing, right? So that was one of them. And then one of the more compelling ones that I kind of look at and I'm like, that is interesting, is this was in college, or no, this was after college. This was after college. I just graduated, and it was like me and two other friends, and then my friend's girlfriend. And I kept joking about wanting to go ghost hunting just because I like creeping around at night. And I remember this guy's girlfriend, my friend's girlfriend, actually was taking it seriously, and she gave us like protective crystals and shit, which I thought was fucking hilarious. She's like, "Oh, crystal for your protection." It's like, thank you. I accepted it. It was like quartz or some shit. She got it like some, I don't know. It was like quartz and like a little sprig of yew or some shit. I was like, all right, bitch, whatever, dude. And so we go out to this place, and it was an abandoned insane asylum, I guess, okay? Which we were checking out at like, midnight, which it was trespassing, but who gives a shit, right? And so we park our car, we get out, we're walking around. It's cold as shit, by the way, and this is an important detail. But, it's we're checking things out. It's kind of creepy, but we're having a good time. There's kind of like things to check out. There's these rooms. I'll see if I could find a picture or two. I didn't take that many. I don't really take many pictures, to be honest. So I'll try to find a couple. But it was cool. We were checking this shit out. It was a good time. And then afterwards, we started, kind of walking around just kind of the area, right? Now, here's the thing. It was cold. It was very cold. But what was odd is that my phone said that it was about 50% charge. All right? It was around 40 to 50%. Or maybe we'll go conservative. It's like 30 to 50% is what it said. But then all of a sudden, my phone just dies. And it won't turn back on. And the battery is like out. Right? And I mean, this can happen if it's cold out. right? That's kind of the main thing that I'm thinking. Rationally, this can just happen when it's cold. You know, your battery fucks up, right? And so, you know, that's kind of what I was thinking at the time. I'm like, oh, that was kind of weird. I was just at like 30%. You know, or perhaps I was misremembering and it was way lower than I actually thought it was. Who knows? There's any number of reasons that could happen. But what was weird is that the same exact thing happened to my friend's girlfriend's phone around the same time. So we were like walking around this area, and like within like 10 to 15 minutes of each other, my phone's dead and the battery's completely drained and I can't turn it back on, and her phone is drained and can't turn back on. It was the same thing. She says she was around 30% too. So once again, you know, this is probably just the cold doing something. But, I mean, it wasn't like that cold, though. It was like above freezing, for sure. And they just kind of both coincidentally happened next to each other. Now, I'm inclined to believe this isn't, you know, anything supernatural. Like, why the fuck would a ghost drain my phone battery unless he was trying to kill us and not have us, you know, be able to call for help? Who knows, you know? Maybe an EMP went off. They were testing out EMPs in there. Some shit. I don't know. But it was interesting. That was an interesting thing. I mean, it was a spooky environment late at night, and a thing that I don't know exactly why it happened. But I don't find that compelling enough to start believing in ghosts. Now, those are kind of the spookier experiences I've had. I may be, you know, leaving some out. I've gone to some abandoned places, and it's pretty obvious that somebody's in there, too, which is creepy. But, I mean, once again, that's just a person, you know. If we're there, there's any number of reasons why somebody else could be in there, you know. That's just how this shit works. But I do know a lot of people who say that they have had ghostly experiences. Actually, before we do that, there's a couple other things I wanted to mention. Well, I guess it kind of ties into this, too. All right, so one of them was that I've done a Ouija board a couple of times. Now, the reason I did the Ouija board was because it was with a girl who I wanted to get jiggy with, you know what I'm talking about. And so she was like, oh, let's do a Ouija board at night in this park. You know, I'm like, hell yeah, baby. Let's go. And so, I mean, I was just trying to do that shit. But, you know, the funny thing about it is, like, you know, you imagine what would happen in that scenario, right? Obviously, the correct play was to do it and then just move the thing around myself to be like, oh, the ghost wants us to bone, you know, some shit like that, right? Oh, you know, like that kind of a thing, like to just ham it up. And, you know, even if you're not like doing that, just being like, oh, it's real, it's really happening. And then she's like, oh, I'm scared, you know, that sort of a thing, right? But I was just such a, like, at the time I was kind of like an edgy atheist guy, and so I was like, oh, there's nothing happening, babe. There's nothing happening at all. I was a complete party pooper, you know. I should have just gone along with it, and then in hindsight, you know, later been like, no, I was faking it, right? But I didn't do that because I was a little dickhead, okay? But, you know, all's well that ends well. We ended up dating anyway at some point, but, well, I guess it did, not all's well that ends well because it didn't last. So, so there you go. But that was one thing. So we did a Ouija board. It didn't work. It was just two people. Yada yada yada. It was not very interesting. I should have made it interesting, but it didn't happen. Now on top of that, there was actually another girl who I was interested in. I went over to her house to hang out with her. And I was talking to her parents. And her fucking dad was like a hobbyist ghost hunter. And she's like, oh yeah, he hunts ghosts. And there was a ghost that like was in my room, and he like found the ghost and all this shit and yada yada yada. And he has all this equipment and like, you know, fucking electromagnetic pulse and yada yada yada. And I'm just like, all right, okay, you know, not buying it at all. But it was interesting, and not gonna lie, I was kind of like, these people are fucking crazy. I did not pursue that any further, which in hindsight I should have. Like, who wouldn't want? It's like fucking Danny Phantom, you know? Like, I go to meet Danny Phantom's parents or some shit. I should have kept on that. But I didn't. But yeah, apparently her dad hunts ghosts, which is pretty fucking cool. Which I mean, I think it's complete nonsense, to be honest, but it's awesome. It's like, oh, what do you do for your hobby? Oh, me and the boys go out and hunt ghosts. like legitimately, and we have equipment. That sounds awesome. I would love to do that. I want to join that guy. I need to hit her back up and be like, hey, can I just hang out with your dad? But anyway, that was cool. Let's talk about some other people's ghost stories that I've heard in kind of my extended, delightful Kissboy universe. All right. Now, one of them was an interview that I did for this folklore class that I took in college. All right. So this class was awesome. It was like my favorite class in college. We would basically, it was introduction to folklore, and we would just read stuff, and guest speakers would come in, and then our homework was like either reading, which was cool, or you go out and you like interview and document folklore, which was sick. And I used it to like document fucking ghost stories and shit from like friends that I had known. And so one of my friends, well, more of an acquaintance, we'll say, I talked to her, and we were talking about she I guess like had a Ouija board, and she and her friends were like doing this Ouija board, and supposedly they'd done this over time, and were getting kind of consistent answers to like understanding who this ghost was, and they'd kind of deduced over time that this was not a friendly spirit. This was not a good spirit, and this instead was a malevolent spirit that lived in her house. All right, so I don't remember the exact details, but I'll have to see if I can find the recording or whatever. But essentially, they would kept meeting up at her place. It was like her and a couple other friends, and every single time they were getting it was kind of like unraveling the lore of this ghost with this Ouija board. And supposedly, at one point, another friend had come over because they wanted to get in on the action. You know, they want to meet this ghost too. And apparently they walked into a room and screamed because they saw a ghost peeking in through the window. I actually managed to find the interview, so here's a little excerpt from that. The audio is crusty as hell because it was from, like, I don't know, 2014, and it was over Skype. So audio sucks, but kind of adds to the ambiance. Anyway, enjoy.
And I walked out of my bedroom in the dark to go to the bathroom, and I was looking at the floor, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw by the stairs, I saw a pair of feet and the bottom of, like, a nightgown. But only the bottom, like, it cut off there. And, like, the nightgown was kind of ripped up, but it was really lacy, and I was like, And then they just I looked up and it was gone, and I was like, okay, it's kind of weird. And then later, a few days later, I'd go back into my room, and I'd see this face that was, like, peering through my window, like, the top right corner, like, looking into my room, and it was super sunken in, and it was a woman's face with longish hair, just a nasty being. Then she would, like, disappear. And then one time, like, I just thought it was kind of crazy, so I was like, whatever, I'll just deal with it. And then I had, and over, I think. They were walking side by side into my room, and I was about 3 feet behind them. And I see them both look into that corner of my window, both scream at the same time, and then both of them fell backwards.
Wait,
Yeah. Both of them scream and fall over at the same time, and they're both pointing at the corner of the window. And they're, like, terrified. Like, these guys were white. And I was just like, what'd you see? And they both said, a face. And I was like, what'd she look like? And they were, like, sunken in, long hair, nightgown, staring into your room. And I was just like, yep, I'm not crazy.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not crazy.
And it scared the shit out of them. And this is a person that I knew that I didn't think would do that necessarily. So I thought that was an interesting detail. Was that this person, I didn't anticipate that they would, actually kind of believe this sort of a thing. But, there's any number of reasons why this could happen. I mean, this person could have just been hamming it up to, sell the whole experience. Like, I saw the ghost right outside the window. Oh my God, let's go talk to it. I have no idea, but it was an interesting story, and so I kind of went around talking to these different people, and so there are a number of people that have used Ouija boards that say that it's worked, and there's a psychological explanation for that sort of a shit, and I'm kind of inclined to believe it. But if you've had experiences like that, let me know. Let me know, because I love hearing about this sort of a thing. It's a lot of fun for me. I'm trying to think of like other spooky stories. Like my mom is a believer in ghosts, and she's told me about stories like where somebody was like in their home and then they left for like, or they went outside for like 2 seconds and they go inside again, and apparently all their furniture was like, thrown about or some shit. That kind of scared the shit out of me. I just heard my neighbor pulling their trash out. I was like, oh my God, it's happening to me right now. Downstairs, all my furniture is being thrown about. But, it's spooky. Oh my God. But yeah, so supposedly there was, some shit like that happened. There's been plenty of times where like, people have lost a loved one and then they see certain things as being signs from the person from the other side. I am inclined to think that that's kind of confirmation bias or wishful thinking. If you think about it, right, there are, with these people, that leave your life, that you're very invested in, a ton about them, and with how many things happen on a day-to-day basis, like it's very easy to basically see something and then tie it back to another thing that you have a ton of knowledge about, right? It's kind of the same sort of phenomenon where it's like you start learning about something and you start seeing it everywhere, Well, it's just because, like, you're just exposed to all sorts of different shit all day, And so you start to just, whenever you make a connection, you're like, oh my God, it's crazy. It must be a supernatural thing. But it's just like, well, no, you just learn about a lot of shit and it just happens that somebody else brings it up later, It's just a coincidence, if you wanted to look at it objectively, fairly, or whatever, you would have to notice those moments where it's like, oh my God, the stars are aligning. This is such a coincidence, but also acknowledge all of the times that doesn't happen, It's like when you learn about something and then nobody says shit about it. That happens way more often, so it's going to inevitably happen that there's some kind of a coincidence. It's just a matter of numbers, right? Eventually an anomaly is going to happen because that's just how probability works, baby. We love probability. That's kind of my opinion on it, but I don't know. Sometimes people have some pretty compelling stories that sound, okay, one other thing that happens, though, is that sometimes you're talking to somebody and they believe it. So they'll have an experience, right? And they believe it, and they really want to believe it, and they want you to believe it as well. And so I don't think that in their own mind they're actively lying when they're talking about this experience they've had, but I think that they're either subconsciously or consciously embellishing certain details in order to kind of sell the story to you and ultimately themselves, right? Because if you start to be like, well, I don't really know, do you think it could have been a person, or do you think you could have been hallucinating? And then they might just make up some details or be misremembering, Once again, memory is a weird thing, and people can kind of, they can kind of just make shit up to try to make a like, I'm pretty sure they've done studies where they've talked to people and they can kind of implant false memories in people's minds. And if you want to believe something, it's a lot easier to do that. So, you're kind of making a narrative in your head and you're filling in the blanks when you don't fully remember the experience, right? So that's kind of my explanation for it, is I don't think these people are outright lying or trying to outright lie a lot of the time. I think that it's just a matter of like memory, wanting to believe something, wanting to persuade other people of their beliefs. That's kind of my take on the whole thing, but I could be wrong. And, I'm open to being wrong. I haven't had an experience that has convinced me. The most convincing one was the thing with the phones, and I think that was pretty, I don't know. You can explain that shit. Like, phones do shit, they can fuck up anyway, right? They could just be faulty, and it just happened that two phones were faulty at the same time when it was cold and we were out in the elements, Shit can happen. Shit can happen. And I'd say that is a lot more of a plausible explanation than ghosts turn my phone off. Because nothing else happened for the rest of the night except when we headed back to our cars, the police were pulling up and we were like, all right, well, time to leave, time to get out of here, time to skedaddle, as it were. But that's most of what I can think of right now with my spooky stories and spooky experiences. It's fun to talk about. But let me know if you have had any spooky ghost stories and leave them in the comments. I would love to hear about it. You can DM me on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever you want. If you can't fit it all in a comment or whatever, I love to hear about it. As I said, like folklore, introduction to folklore was like my favorite class ever. And I love just hearing about stories and, local legends and all that sort of stuff. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, thank you all for listening to me yap. Hopefully it was kind of interesting and entertaining. But hopefully I'll have a bigger video for the main channel out soon. It just takes a while. There's lots of math that needs to be done. Math and coding and yada, yada, yada. And so I have these ideas for projects in my mind, but it's a one-man show. I'm editing the shit. I'm putting together all the PowerPoints. Wow. Lots of work. But it ends up taking a lot of time, So hopefully you can understand that. But anyway, that's enough for tonight. Hope you all have a good one. Hope you all have a spooky time. Bye-bye.